You're tuned in and listening to Blended Families Ministry with Larry and Carol Snap right here on Christian Living Radio with me, Pastor G. God bless you. Enjoy the class.
Blended Families, week 5 of 12. This is the spousal relationship. So this is all about husbands and wives and what they're supposed to do and why they're created and how and what their purpose is and all that kind of stuff. And then we have a little video after a bit that really talks about the brains in particular, how different they are, okay, which is fun. Mark Gungor, he's hilarious. But let's just start in the beginning, in Genesis, okay? God created man in his image. Now, he first created a man, Adam, from the dirt, and there was some period of time, who knows how long it was, where he had to name all the animals and do all that kind of stuff, and then God said, well, it's not good for man to be alone, so he put Adam to sleep, and he took one of his ribs out and created a female, a woman. So God starts with a man. He created him in his image out of the dirt, and it's not good for man to be alone, so then he creates 2 fleshes out of the original one flesh. So now they're male and female, and he basically tells them to become one flesh. Okay? It's not working?
We stopped.
Stop. Okay, hang on. I was having trouble with it last week, too. Trying to reconnect. Yeah. Well, just let it go, I guess. It's trying to reconnect. The wireless is bad. Okay, so we get what we get as far as that goes. If I have to, I'll use one from last time on the video. It's back up?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we have 2 fleshes created from the original one flesh, and then God tells them talks to both of them and says to become one flesh, and then he gave them a purpose, okay? And Genesis 1:28 says he blessed them and told them to be fruitful, multiply, and take dominion. So they're supposed to be fruitful, they're supposed to be productive and do stuff, be creative. They're supposed to multiply. God wanted godly offspring for the generations. And man was to take dominion over what God had created. All the animals, and all the plants and everything. Now, what we have seen today is a lot of things that we were supposed to have dominion over us. Alcohol, drugs, a lot of plant stuff. Alcohol comes from corn and other stuff like that. Different other kind of pharmaceuticals are basically plant-based. So the plant kingdom is taking over us in a lot of cases. But we were told to take dominion over all of that. And some of it's trying to take over us. So there's that battle that we have to continue to keep taking dominion, and it is a battle. But when God created man, the male and the female, he created them equal in value. Okay, if we look at it as both of them came from the same image. God didn't create the female out of another clump of dirt. It was still part of that original one image of God, right? The complete image, and now it's 2 parts, but it's supposed to be one image still. So it's important to realize that the man and the woman are equal in value because they're both part of his image, but they're unique in purpose. A man has a purpose, and the woman has a purpose. The husband, men are supposed to be husbands and fathers. The women are supposed to be wives and mothers. And that was the purpose that they were given. Okay? It was not intended, and, there's so much sin going on today that everything's all messed up, so this is what it was supposed to be. It's not what it is. It's a goal to try to get back to it. But it was intended for men to be the husbands of wives and fathers of children, and wives to bear the children and help raise them up and teach them and love on them, and kind of both of them are supposed to protect and all that kind of stuff. But the husband was the provider, the wife was the nurturer, and all that kind of stuff. So they were created with specific duties, and big difference between male and female. I think there's so many things that women can do that men can't, and vice versa. Generally speaking, the men are physically bigger, stronger, and all that kind of stuff. So everything is with a purpose. God doesn't waste his time doing stuff. It all has a purpose. There's a specific purpose. And when we do the things that we were created to do, things generally flow better. And in blended families where we are, and we were talking about this some last week, when you have the single parents trying to come together and figure out who's going to wear the pants, who's going to wear the mantle, all that kind of stuff, and who's the boss, all that kind of stuff, it's important to go back and kind of look at how things were supposed to be. And when we have an understanding of how things were supposed to be, we're Christians, we're supposed to be doing it God's way, it's just important to realize what your purpose is. And unfortunately, especially single moms, they have to be the husband, the father and the mother both. And single fathers have to be fathers and moms, which that's tough. But you just don't do both as well as the other one would have done. You just can't. There's always something lacking in that. So, start them out early, right? Get it in there quick. Okay, now in the creation, I'll do this little diagram here while I'm here. Part of the spousal relationship is also the sexual relationship between a husband and a wife. And it was something God created in the beginning for a husband and a wife, right? God created sex for procreation. He wanted godly offspring. And so that was how that was done. It enables a husband and a wife to become one flesh. And part of that is it seals the blood covenant. Back in the old days, Jewish tradition, a couple would get married, and it was probably just two families saying, "You guys are going to be husband and wife." I mean, there was no real courting or anything like that going on. So you're going to marry this one. Okay. Well, after the wedding ceremony, it was like, okay, there's the tent. Go consummate the marriage, and the two fathers would go check the sheets and make sure there was some blood there. And if there wasn't, something was wrong, right? But it was that little bit of blood that was sealing the covenant, and that's kind of the way God set that up. And nobody can really figure out why there's that hymen in there. Doctors can't figure out what's it there for. Well, that's why. It was intended to be torn and issue a little bit of blood, and that seals the covenant. Okay? Now, God created sex to be within the realm of marriage, and anything outside of marriage is sin and fornication of some sort. So, make sure this is within here, and don't go outside of that one. But there were reasons that he created it, and it's a good thing, right? So let's, if Karen, if you'll cut the lights. I'm gonna.
Jenny, can you shut the lights on the other side?
I'm gonna put the video up here. Take me a second to get it ready, though.
Put it loud so I can hear.
There we go. So for those that might be watching online, we're getting ready to do a Mark Gungor, men's brains, women's brains. A little bit video, about 5 minutes. There we go. It should be on here. All right.
Because if you take an event and you connect it to an emotion, it burns in your memory and you can remember it forever.
Back it up. Hey, Oscar.
We start discussing men's brains, women's brains, and how they're very different from each other. Now, I want to start with men's brains. All right? Now, men's brains are very unique. Men's brains are made up of little boxes. And we have a box for everything. We've got a box for the car. We've got a box for the money. We've got a box for the job. We've got a box for you. We've got a box for the kids. We've got a box for your mother somewhere in the basement. We got boxes everywhere. And the rule is the boxes don't touch. When a man discusses a particular subject, we go to that particular box. We pull that box out. We open the box. We discuss only what is in that box. All right? And then we close the box and put it away, being very, very careful not to touch any other boxes. From men's brains. Women's brains are made up of a big ball of wire. And everything is connected to everything. Money's connected to the car connected to your job, and your kids are connected to your mother. Everything's connected to everything. It's like the internet superhighway. And it's all driven by energy that we call emotion. It's one of the reasons why women tend to remember everything. Because if you take an event and you connect it to an emotion, it burns in your memory and you can remember it forever. The same thing happens for men. It just doesn't happen very often because, quite frankly, we don't care. Women tend to care about everything. And she just clubbed it. That most women are not aware of. This particular box has nothing in it. the nothing box is our favorite box. If a man has a chance, he'll go to his nothing box every time. That's why a man can do something seemingly completely brain dead for hours on end. You know, like fishing. Now, they've actually measured this. The University of Pennsylvania a couple of years ago did a study and discovered that men have the ability to think about absolutely nothing and still breathe. You know, they connected all the wires and stuff like that, much to brain activity, and all of a sudden, I think he's dead! Women can't do it. They can't do it. Their minds never stop. And they don't understand the nothing box. And it drives them crazy. Because nothing drives a woman more crazy or makes her feel more irritated than to witness a man doing nothing. Let's start discussing men's brains, women's brains, and how they're very different from each other. Now, I want to start with men's brains. All right, now men's brains.
Larry, you didn't have the one on that had the trust in it.
It's too long.
Okay.
It was like 13 minutes.
Okay. There was another part of it that Yvette and Alfonso show in their class, and it's awesome. I guess we could interchange that with one of the other teachings because it's really good.
Yeah.
Teaching you how to trust one another, and again showing the difference between men and women. It's great. He is so funny, Mark Unger. If you ever get a chance to hear him or get any of his DVDs are so funny. And his books, he's just hilarious.
This was like 5 minutes out of a 4 DVD set.
Yeah, he's...
So, yeah, there's a lot of good material that he has. He was here for one of the marriage conferences one year. And still just as hilarious as ever.
Yeah. That's his thing. He's pretty well known for men's and women's brains. And you can go on the internet and pick it up.
Yeah,
it's on our website.
It's all over YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, just look for Mark Gunger.
Yeah.
Okay. I call it waffles and spaghetti. He calls it boxes and a ball of wire. I like food. I actually had waffles this morning. Okay. And I love spaghetti. But there's something interesting that happens. Again, God creates male and female, and he does different things with each one. And there's a hormone process that takes place while the kid is still in the womb. And for the male babies, there's a testosterone thing that happens, and that's what creates different connections in the brain. And that doesn't happen with the female one. So it creates a difference in the way things are wired. Okay? Now, the way that ends up working is we tend to be more logical. We use one half of our brain at a time. We do get to use both halves, but we don't use them like the women do. It's just all one big brain, right? Everything's going back and forth all the time. Ours kind of stays in one side, and if we have to, we try to get in the other side, but it's hard. We're more logical, and the women generally are more relational, okay? Which gives them some advantages when it comes to having that vertical relationship with the Holy Spirit, because they're just relational anyway. Men, because of the way that brain thing was done, and before they were even born, we're more logical and we're more looking ahead. Okay, so we're logical and visionary as compared to women who are relational and historical. Okay, not hysterical, but historical. Okay? We're looking down the road. We're today and tomorrow. If it was yesterday, it was yesterday. Who cares? Right? For the women, being relational and historical, it's about all the things that happened to get us here today. We're not that interested in where we're going tomorrow. It's how did we get where we're at, and who did what, and they seem to remember birthdays, anniversaries, all that kind of stuff a whole lot better than guys do because it's historical, right? But it's because the brains are made different. They're wired different, just like they were talking about in the video. And it does make a difference in how we relate to one another. And I can't tell you how many times we've had in counseling, one spouse will say, well, why can't they just do like I do? If they were more like me, we'd get along great. Usually it's the wife saying that to the husband, because they want to communicate. They want to talk. They want to relate, right? And we're thinking about what we're going to do tomorrow. And it's like, you're bugging me. What's the deal? So we want to get to where we want to get to, and they're like, but I want to talk about my feelings about yesterday. So guys, we have to learn how to listen. That's hard for us. Because what we're hearing is all about yesterday or something in the past, right? We want to talk about who's going to the game tomorrow, like for Austin's benefit, who's pitching tomorrow, the stats, the numbers, that kind of, the logic to whatever's going on. But one of the things that happens here is when there's needs to communicate and there's an issue, most of the time it would be more difficult for the wife to forgive the husband because he's ready to move on and she needs to express her feelings about whatever it was that happened. Because it happened just the other day, and we're like, yeah, it happened the other day. Let's move on. But I need, So for the men, we really need to take the time to listen and validate the feelings. It's not about fixing something, which is what our reflex would be. Oh, you have a problem? Tell me what it is. I'll go fix it. Make it go away. Right? Most of the time, it's not something that needs to be fixed. It's just something that needs to be listened to and heard and validated. Okay. Next thing, 1 Corinthians 7. Forgot to put that on here. 7, 1 through 7, I believe. It talks about the husband-wife relationship, especially the sexual intimacy part. Again, it's one man, one woman. Marriage is a covenant till death do us part. Whichever one you're on. Okay? This is blended families, after all. But when it comes to the sex part, there's so many times we hear in counseling and different things where men tend to use money as an influencer in that department. Women tend to use sex, sometimes yes or no, to negotiate. That's not biblical. Obviously, it's what it says in here is one man, one woman, and do not defraud one another. Right? Your body does not belong to yourself. It belongs to your spouse. So what needs to happen, though, is an understanding of that part that I'm not mine, I'm yours. And you're not yours, you're mine.
To serve me.
And yeah, marriage is all about serving one another.
You're listening to Blended Families Ministry right here on ChristianLivingRadio.com.
But this is one of those areas where because of all this stuff that's happened in the past, previous marriages, now you have a sexual past. Most of us do. Very few of us were saved as little kids, so usually there's some kind of sin that happened along the way. And the whole point of God doing what he did back in the beginning was you have one wife, there's the sexual part of the marriage, and it's just yours. There's nothing else to compare it to. I mean, it could be great or it could be average, but you don't know any better. So it's awesome. Whatever it is. Okay? One man, one woman, do not defraud one another, and your body is not your own, it belongs to your spouse. So, and God created it, so it's a good thing. Now, when we come to blended families, I mean, it's like 99.9% certain that nobody's going to be a virgin at this point. I mean, there's going to be kids, there was a spouse, there was going to be sex, okay? Now, when it comes to a blended family and becoming a blended family, one of the things we talk about in the premarital curriculum is take some time to abstain. If there's been anything going on, stop it. Take some time, whatever that time is, months.
Fast for one.
Yeah, it's like fasting. You're setting that aside so that you can kind of hit the spiritual reset button and create that, you're repenting, you're confessing whatever else happened, you're confessing it as a sin, you're repenting, you're getting forgiven. God washes away all that, and at least in his eyes, we're all pure again. So there is a way to hit that reset button, because God really intended for marriage to be entered into by two virgins. And back on this covenant thing, like we were talking about earlier, I think back in those days, it was the father of the groom that paid for the wedding. But if there wasn't any blood on the sheets, then the father of the bride had to reimburse him because it was damaged goods. So
there's no way to check.
Yeah, interesting. A man's word is to be his bond, right? But interesting, it's like all in the female, right? There's no way to check a man except his word.
You just have to take his word.
So interesting in that. Yeah. Whoever brought it up, you or
Me.
you would? No. So yeah, it's a good point. It's all on the woman to stay pure, and the man's word is supposed to be true.
Another point is, in those days, some men were allowed to have more than one wife. So
there was a lot of polygamy going on back then, and a lot of multiple wives, and slavery and all kind of stuff going on. I mean, there was a whole bunch of different kinds of blending going on back then.
I know why Solomon had 700 wives.
More than that.
He's cheesy like that all the time.
It's good.
It is good. Use that.
A sense of humor. I'll tell you.
He pulled that one out of the box. You got that one out of the box.
Yeah. Is it the Holy Spirit here? Is burning inside? Is that you, girl?
Right. Humor will save you from a lot of nasty stuff.
Yeah.
So, there's just something about. Sometimes we just get too serious about stuff. We start picking up the offense. We assume that there was a negative intent in what was said, and those kind of things. But if you have a sense of humor, you can turn a negative into a positive and make fun of it. and everybody gets a laugh, and the fire gets put out. But you can pour water on it through humor, or you can pour gas on it, and that's kind of up to you. Either one. But it's important to be able to take that thought captive, like we've talked about before, and respond in grace and or humor, and not return evil for evil. Okay? So, any questions, comments so far?
Yeah.
Karen?
Also, if there was not that blood covenant, didn't in the Leviticus, didn't they were required to stone the bride for not being a virgin?
Some religions, some countries.
I would have to go back and read it again, but yeah, there were. If they would stone somebody for adultery.
Right, for adultery, but I wasn't
for sure.
This section.
But that would be sort of adultery, right? So they probably would have. I'd have to go back and read it again to make sure. But yeah, adultery for sure was a stonable offense. And if we look at Mary and Joseph, right, they were betrothed, not married yet, and she ends up pregnant. Well, how'd that happen, right? And Joseph had to really work at keeping her from getting stoned. So I think you're on the right track there. He got away with. They didn't stone her, but it was because he had to fess up to hey, it's all good. We're still going to get married. I'm still going to marry her and all this kind of stuff. He didn't throw her out, but he could have. Yeah. So. Okay, hit the spiritual reset button. Restore the purity that God expects in a new marriage. So be careful with that one. But it's all about confessing. I mean, premarital sex, whatever it is, confess it, stop it, repent.
Well, put a time frame on it, though.
Well, whenever you decide to do this, and then until you get married.
On it.
So.
Because we've had people that when they start doing the premarital and we come to the chapter and we talk about how they, because they're already living together. Well, I don't know if I want to do that. And then she pulls this, for the next 3 months, and he's 3 months. And then we have another one that said for 3 weeks because she was waiting on the day they were going to get married. But 3 months that's ridiculous. I mean, especially if you've been living together for a couple of years. But, you've got to be in agreement whatever time frame it is. But that's important. But even when Larry and I went through our mess, and we didn't know anything about this kind of stuff, when we heard this, we even did a reset. And we were married. We'd been married for 23 years. But we had sex before we got married. So we said, wow, we didn't even know any of that. We need to get rid of all that garbage so that it's pure, everything is right with this marriage. We're going to do it right. We're going to do it God's way. So we even did a reset.
Yeah.
I mean,
so up to that point, it was unconfessed sin. Yeah. All those years.
That's how we looked at it. We didn't know.
So it's you look back on it, it's really kind of no surprise that it kind of fell apart after a while, just because it wasn't based on anything godly. So, well, yeah, you were brought up in the church. I really wasn't. So, we were kind of unequally yoked, and so we didn't do anything. There was the unequally yoked part that was like, well, we're just not going to do it.
Yeah.
She mostly was. There were some things she didn't understand, and I went through little Bible study, Sunday school as a kid, but most of my life it was nothing. So when you start learning, it's like, oh wow, give me a little more, oh, give me a whole lot more, But yeah, there was all that unconfessed sin from the past that was still hanging around.
Yeah, and with that, kind of like you said, that marriage is a spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
That just gave the enemy weapons to use against you when you were ignorant of that.
Sure.
As the Lord showed you how to close up those little loopholes so the enemy don't come in.
Yeah, there's one less arrow in the quiver that he can shoot you with.
Amen. Amen.
Sarah?
I was just going back to, I've been married for 10 years. We had a time of purity. We didn't kiss until we actually got married. We did like a courtship thing and stayed pure. But I just remember it took a lot of discipline, self-control. Wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's tough. Yeah.
It's just so natural to be affectionate to the person you love and you're going to marry.
Well, we're going to get married anyway.
Yeah.
Right?
But I do remember praying a lot and just like, okay, Lord, help us to have self-control until that time.
Yeah.
It's because you love that person and want to be affectionate.
Well, even the blended families that, they were living together or whatever, and then they get married.
Yeah.
They're married, so what's the problem? But it was the sin in the past that hangs on.
Yeah.
You got to get it out. So it's all about just taking a week or two even. And, okay, we're confessing all that stuff as a sin. It is what it is. God forgive us for that. Okay, no problem. And then forgive yourselves for sinning. Okay, we're good. We're good, God. Yeah, we're good. Back and forth. Now we're good to go. And the enemy's like, dang.
It made it more special and intimate, and it was exciting. And then all the little children, like my daughter and my son, knew that they had never seen us kiss until the actual wedding.
Yeah. That's cool.
It's really intimate.
That is cool.
All right. Okay, a little bit more over here. Just more spouse kind of stuff. I think I've mentioned it a few times, but one of the best pieces of advice that we got was, my spouse is not my enemy. We keep talking about spiritual warfare, and I like to say life in general, marriage in particular, is spiritual warfare. And one of the things I got out of the men's ministry was love gives and lust takes. So you look at what love is. Love is about giving. It's about serving. You want to please the other person. And if we're talking about a sexual relationship, it's about you want to please the other person. It's not, what am I going to get out of this? Right? That's the lust part. What's in it for me? And you go looking to go get something versus how can I serve you? Right? So that's a big difference. Love gives, lust takes. In the very first lesson, we had a little diagram about different submissions and so forth. Back to Ephesians 5:21-33, it starts out with submitting one to another. Okay, now over here, we were looking at how God created the man and the woman equal in value, but unique in purpose, right? So a husband and a wife, when they're submitting one to another, they're treating each other as more important as themselves. It's really more about you than me, and how can I help you? Carol and I like to do this little thing where we try to outserve each other.
That's fun.
And being the gentleman that I am, I like to let her win.
Because he likes to be served.
King of this castle.
Now, occasionally I'm up. Hey, can I get you something while I'm up? I mean, it happens.
When he gets out of his nothing box.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's Christ came to serve, not be served. And it's about a wedding. He's coming for his bride. Okay? The whole Bible's about a wedding. But put each other ahead of yourself out of mutual respect. Treating each other as equals in value. knowing that I have a certain thing I'm supposed to be doing and you have a certain thing you're supposed to be doing, and when each of us is doing what we're supposed to be doing, life is good. Because I'm not getting frustrated that you're not doing what you're supposed to. Now I got to, pick up the slack or whatever, and now it's all fleshy feelings, emotions, and all that kind of stuff. You're not working out of the Holy Spirit. Husbands, this is Ephesians 5:33. Husbands, love your wife as Christ loves the church. He died for his church. That's a tough assignment. But he also says there's no greater love than to lay down your life for a friend. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go jump in front of a bus just to be the hero, It's about serving, right? And then it says, wives, respect your husband. And there was an Emerson Eggerichs, Dr. Emerson, that did a great thing on this about love and respect. A big difference here, it's husbands are instructed to love. Wives are instructed to respect. Why isn't it just love and love? That's what he wondered. So he dug into it, and what he came up with was we're being instructed to do the opposite of our nature. Our flesh, when guys are at work with other guys, it's all about respect. Hardly ever do you, there was a time I was, hey, I love you, man. But I will do what you ask me because I respect you because of your position. Mostly. Women, they have their kids. They just automatically love their kids. They don't have to be told to love their kids. Respect, that's a different thing, right? Now, the thing with respect, though, it needs to be based on position, not performance. Especially performance against your expectations. We hear it all the time. Well, I would respect him if he did so-and-so, or such and such. It's like, he doesn't deserve my respect. Well, do we respect God because of his performance? Yeah. He's always doing good stuff, but it's because of who he is and his position that we reverence him. He's God, right? So we respect God because he's God, and that's his position. It has nothing to do with his performance. But because he's God, he performs in a perfect way to bless us, protect us, and all that kind of stuff. We talked before about expectations. One restaurant I used to like, he's not there anymore, but maybe this is why. There was a thing about, if you don't like our food, or if our food doesn't meet your expectations, lower your expectations.
That's scary.
And he had to take a picture of that. He said, I'm going to use that.
It just makes so much sense, right? If your expectations are way up here, let's just say for a wife of her husband, her expectations are up here, but the way she talks to him is down here someplace. There's going to be problems. That kind of needs to be flipped around, because, like we said last week, part of the purpose, part of the role of the wife is to build her husband and her kids, but to build them up. Most of them are tearing them down. Yet they still have the expectations up here.
This is a good place to do the 10 count thing.
Oh, yeah. This was an example of something like that. It's some tribe in Africa where cattle are like currency. Okay?
It's like the dowry.
The dowry, yeah. The new groom has to pay a price to the father of the to-be bride. Right? So cattle are used a lot for that kind of stuff. And this he's a young guy. He's got some friends in the tribe and everything. And he said, "Yeah, I'm gonna marry that one." And I'm like, "Are you crazy? She's like the ugliest one in the tribe." And no, she's. I'm gonna pay 10 cows for her. She's barely 2 cows. You're nuts. Well, he went ahead. He gave the father the 10 cows, and the guys were like, "Man, you're an idiot." Well, everything he did, he treated her as if she was worth 10 cows. He built her up to that, and she became that. And then everybody's like blown away, because their expectations were way down here. But he saw the potential. He loved her. It was worth that to him to be with her. And so he just kept constantly, you're a 10 cow bride, all the time. But I really don't feel it. No, you are. And he just kept building her up. That's what we're both supposed to do. Edify one another. And in the edification, obviously we're not speaking ugly stuff. We're speaking positive. We do not assume negative stuff. That was actually an American Express thing I learned. I'm sure it's biblical. I mean, there should be nothing coming out of your mouth that would be evil, right? No corrupt speech coming out of your mouth. So you have to assume positive intent, because if you start assuming negative intent, you're going to come up with all kind of evil schemes that these people are up to, and you're going to just assume all that stuff. One of these other little things that I learned was assumption is the lowest form of knowledge, because you're making it all up. It's not based on any facts or anything. It's just you making it up. And so you can come up with, our hearts are evil continually. So we come up with some really good evil schemes that people are trying to do. And we absolutely know for a fact that that's why they did whatever it was they did. Yet we have no facts. So, husbands, love your wife as Christ loves the church. We need to make sure we get that whole sentence in there. Wives, respect your husband. Make sure it's based on his position, because God put him there. Not his performance, based on your expectations. But that's where we have to communicate. We need to communicate expectations, because most of the time we don't. They're just expectations in our head, and the other person has no idea, so they don't ever live up to what you had in your head. They didn't know that was the target. And then they don't meet it, so now you're disappointed, and after a while you kind of resent them for not doing it, and then after a while the resentment gets into bitterness. Now you hate their guts. So
we always tell them, speak with love and respect, or don't speak, or be tender and gentle. And if you can, again, don't speak. But it is, speak as you would want to be spoken to. If you're having a disagreement on anything, sit down and talk about it, but not in front of the children. But when you're alone, the two of you, and work it out. But it's just, well, that's when you really need those Jesus glasses sometimes, Sometimes you really get upset with each other, but what would Jesus say and what would Jesus do? Not what would I do and what do my emotions want me to do. What really should I do and what I should say? It's like here when you say the words and they're very cutting and very hurtful, it's like putting the nails in a fence, and we use this all the time. You take the nails out and you say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you, I didn't mean to say that about you. So you take the nail out, and the hole is still there. They said they were sorry, and he meant he was sorry. But the only one that can fill in those holes and smooth, first you cover it with putty, and then you have to smooth it out and make it like it never happened or it never was said. God's the only one that can do that. And you have to allow God to do that. takes a while.
Yeah.
I know when we had our upset, Larry said, well, when can I start telling jokes again? I said, I'm not ready for funny right now. Don't even go there, Larry. I'll let you know when I'm ready, but not yet.
That was really hard.
That was hard for him because he loves it. Yeah.
When that's your first thought, to make a joke of something and you can't be funny?
That is not funny.
Talk about taking every thought captive.
And we did that. We didn't know any of this stuff. We had to learn it too.
We had to walk through it.
Yeah.
But we survived. You know, y'all can too. With God, right? Okay, that's about all I got for today. Any other comments, questions? Good, bad, ugly? Who cares?
I think humor is important, but there's a timing for it, like Carol was saying, because sometimes humor you can use it as a deflection to not really hear what's being said. So there's a time and place for all of that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That was hard for me to learn. Yeah, timing.
Yeah.
I mean, in comedy, timing is everything, right? But when it's not supposed to be funny, that's important too.
Yeah, exactly. But I was going to say about the respect, the husband, wives to husbands, and vice versa. But when I look at that, I think about what the Lord says in His commandments. You know, children, honor your parents. So I use that as an analogy. I remember that the Lord began to teach me about that that commandment that God put was way after the fall, several, hundreds of years. I don't know how many. I don't know if it had been 1,000 years after the fall of mankind. God even sending the flood, but then He put that commandment in there. So it's based on, like you said, position, not necessarily performance.
Yeah.
So that our days will be long on the earth.
Right. Fifth commandment.
Yeah.
Right, out of the 10. So it was Moses' day.
Yeah.
Right, that's when they wrote it on the rocks.
Yeah.
But that's where I think a lot of people, and even myself and Carol too, sometimes we look, the performance is what's easy to see.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's right out there in the open. Everybody can see it. And we forget about the position part. You know, one of those holisms that we've been through before was that we judge others by their actions, but we judge ourselves by our intentions.
Wow.
It's like, well, I would never do that. And then we judge them for doing it. And then, we get around the corner where nobody can see us and we're doing it. But it's, oh, I would never do that. You're so terrible. So it's all about looking inside first before you use something out where everybody can hear it.
I don't know if this is the right spot for it or not, but I just would like to say those of you that are married or dating, that you need to get with your partner and come up with a safety net, a security code. So if you're out somewhere and something happens to offend one of you, you say that word, the other one knows, oh boy, something must have happened, and we're out of here right away. Nobody else knows what's going on, and then you leave, and then you can discuss what happened. I know we shared this with one of the other pastors in their marriage class, and the pastor said, well, that's a good point, but I don't know when that would ever be used for everybody. But when we broke up that session and they were on their way somewhere, they were just kind of joking with one another and said, well, if we had to come up with a word, what would we use? What word would you think, just for the heck of it? And they come up with a word. And they were going to a family function. Something happened that made the wife feel very uncomfortable. And she went up to him and said that word. And he says, I can't believe that. It happened the day that you told us to have a security code. So it's something that just gives you that extra safety net. So you know that something must have happened. You're feeling uncomfortable. So you get out of there. No questions asked. Nobody has to explain anything. But think about what your security code would be. What word? The squirrel, or let's go for Starbucks, or do you think it's going to rain today? Maybe it's raining. Whatever.
Okay, cool.
Whatever you think, but think of one so you know you have that safety net. It's important, and it could make the difference, because if your intended spouse doesn't know how you feel. Larry and I, we've been together so long, he can tell just looking at me that something's wrong. And when he calls me on the phone, he can tell, and he doesn't see me, he can hear my voice. It takes you a while to get that. But if you come up with the word and you know you're not going to use that word unless it's really important, that's just going to give you that safety net that you need, that you feel comfortable in having it. So, but that was, we couldn't believe it when they told us, would you believe we were laughing about it? And we actually used it that day. It really came handy. So be thinking about one. Okay.
Anything else?
Awesome.
Okay.
Kind of quiet.
You know what? You always call me when I'm thinking about something. One of the things that's worked well for us, and based on position, the children obey your parents. If you have stepchildren and they like to, complain about the other parent, one thing we've been saying over and over again is, okay, because let's say one of my stepchildren, they're kind of complaining about their father. And Christina can jump on board sometimes, that's not good. But I'll say, listen, guys. Unless he tells you to break the law or do something immoral or dangerous, do it. He tells you to pick up, and it takes all the confusion out. He said, he's your father, and I don't care if he yells at you. I don't want to hear about it, because I know there was a reason why he yelled at you. Yeah. I said, if you do what he says, unless he tells you, and I said, your school teacher too, unless he tells you to break the law or do something illegal or immoral, do it. It's gotten rid of a lot of confusion on the children about what it means to obey authority.
Right. Good point.
Well, we still have like a minute. Do we just go through that part where you discuss how to talk to the other parent? Like, his thinking of how this situation might...
Man,
right.
woman.
So Christina would get into a fight with her ex-spouse, and then out of the blue, I'd come home from work, and then she'd jump all over me. So she's trying to take out that vengeance that she wanted to take out on him or whatever. And so one day, she said, I got to call him and ask him something. And I said, okay, well, let's talk about it first. And to this day, we still do this.
That's good. That's good.
And as you're married longer and there's more separation, the kids get older, you end up having to talk to the spouse less, which is great.
Yeah.
But I said, Christina, well, this is what I want him to do. Blah, 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 I want him to do this. One of the kids needs to go do this. We need to do whatever. And I said, okay, so what were you going to say to him? Well, I'm going to tell him we have to do this. I'm like, no. And so, because I know how he thinks, because we're different. Right. And so I said, why don't you do this? Call him up and say, hey, Joe, thank you, by the way, the other day. There was actually a thing he did. And I'm like, hey, let's acknowledge that he helped out and went above and beyond. Thank you for going out of your way to pick up Elijah or whatever. And by the way, I had a thought, but I wanted to get your input. Because she had full custody, she had full control of custody, everything. And she used that a little bit, and it rubbed her the wrong way. And I said, I wanted to get your input on this. I'm thinking this, but I wanted to run it. She totally showed him respect. Right? And guess what happened when she showed him the respect? He goes, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do it. She hung up the phone. I was sitting next to her, and she said, that has never happened. Well, probably she hadn't given you much respect ever either.
Right. That was the magic word.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I know how to rub that guy. I get along with him great. I love him. We're like this. And so, now the same thing, if I've got to talk to my ex, I'll be like, what is she doing? I'm going to tell her. She goes, no. She's looking at it from this angle, the relationship angle. And so that works really well, you guys. Be one. You guys are there together. You have different giftings. You're made differently, not to fight each other over the differences, but to come together and be one and have the right angle. It's really hard. But you can do it.
All right. So thanks, Austin.
Christian Living Radio, spreading the good news of Jesus Christ 24/7. Our goal is to bring you a life-changing word through music and diverse programming, like the one you're listening to now. Pastor Kenyatta Goins is the visionary of Christian Living Radio, and he's dedicated to the idea that Christians should even have a more prominent presence in the marketplaces. Maybe you need prayer for yourself and or your family, maybe for a friend. We'd be privileged to stand in the gap for you. If you're listening to this broadcast, click on the Contact Us tab and send us your prayer request. We'd also like to hear from you if you have something on your mind, or just give us some feedback. We support many ministries, so maybe you'd like to make a one-time or a monthly recurring donation. We believe that when you sow into these ministries, you'll indeed be blessed. And of course, if you sow into this show in particular, we believe that it's a blessing for you, so please consider sponsoring us. There's a special area under the Donate tab where you can send your monetary gift or call 520-812-6363. That's 520-812-6363 to receive more information about sponsorship. Thank you.